Good afternoon, everyone. This is Robert Acevedo, and I'm sitting here with a good friend of mine who's become a better friend as time has gone by. His name is Arthur Wyckoff, and we are in the city of Chatsworth. Is that where we're at, Art? We still are in
Yeah.
Chatsworth, right? Um, this is the first episode of a series that I've created to explore and talk about the unhoused issue. It's an issue that obviously it impacts several areas across the United States and I think other parts of the world as well. But for our purposes, I'm focusing on our community in the San Fernando Valley. That sort of like the cities that are on the periphery of where I live. I live in Chatsworth. Art is unhoused, but he's in the city of Chatsworth. So this focus is to feature people from within this community because it's a community I know. And the whole idea behind this is to interview many of the folks that I've run across in this area. Um, I don't want Art to just sit there without having anything to say, but that's why I chose Art, and he was gracious enough to be the first in this experiment. The whole idea behind this is to bring more awareness to this issue, in the hopes that we can do something to change people's uh, maybe bring more awareness, which could bring more assistance. Just if it even means just bringing more empathy on the part of people that don't want to understand the situation or want to ignore it. Um, it's making it more real for them so that they can maybe take a different approach when they might be walking down the street and seeing somebody and maybe think about their situation in a little bit of a different way because maybe they ran across this video or some other things that help them to be a little bit more patient before they made a judgment against whoever it is that they're encountering in that particular at that particular time. So I'm going to ask Art just a couple of general questions. I think well, first of all, you haven't really heard Art speak, and when you do, you're going to hear an accent. So Art, where are you from? So you were born in. Tell me where you were born again.
I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, believe it or not,
But you got a different.
but I grew up in the South. I grew up in Dallas, Texas.
So
So I know I kind of sound like Gomer Pyle, but I have fun with my accent. It makes people relax. And so I hope when we get into this discussion about the homelessness, that the people who hear my voice are relaxed as well enough to listen.
right, and you know what? I actually personally, I I love people's voices, and when they're different. Art is he's a very bright person. Though we just talked about this, and we talked about, well, if you're that bright, then how do we end up in this kind of situation? And you can't see me right now, the people that are listening, but I actually was in that situation myself. Things happen in life, circumstances, and they put you there, and it's not always what it appears to be. So anyway, Art, so you've got this great accent that you develop in Dallas. I've known Art for it's been at least a year. I think it might be more than that. I think it could be. I want to say
That's
it's
about
more.
right.
It's about a year or so. We ran into each other at a fitness place here in town. I saw Art, and he had his trademark. I think your backpack, and you had that beanie on. But I'm gonna start off with a question that I think a lot of people get asked when you're in an unhoused situation, which is the new term I think, or homeless. It's the same thing as far as I can tell, but there's a new version of the word now. It's called unhoused. But if you're comfortable with this, if you want to explain maybe how many years have you been in this situation?
Oh, it'd be my pleasure. That's what I'm here for.
Good, thank you.
Um, Believe it or not, I've been homeless a total of about 25 years.
That's what Mark's a friend of ours, a mutual friend. Mark was telling me that as well. So, do you remember how it started, or was there a catalyst, or and again, if it's ever too much for you.
Well,
You
if I
can.
may, I'd like to start this off by I am really sick of how the public has been forced to see the homeless issue as like a cliche.
Right.
Because if there's one thing really interesting about the homeless population is that there's no cliche. There's 100 homeless people, and you have 100 different reasons of why these people are homeless.
That's
It's
correct.
it's really incredible, and I agreed to do this because of the fact that I have seen how it's become such a cliche, and I'd like to explain in my case.
Feel free. Feel free. Thank you.
There's a lot of older people out there who are just like me who became homeless because they're on fixed incomes and inflation goes up, but their income doesn't go up.
Correct.
And so what happened with me was I had an apartment that I was paying $550 a month for, and 10 years later it was going for $900.
And you were
And
still getting maybe the same type of income or whatever you might be.
yeah, my income didn't
Correct.
my income my bills doubled.
Right.
My income didn't go up one bit, and that's how I became homeless.
And that's actually one of the things that I learned in my situation, because I was homeless for about maybe six months or so, maybe longer, and it was an eye opener to me because traditionally, I think most people still want to believe that a homeless person is a person that is having issues with alcohol or drugs,
There's a lot of
or
those people out there, but they're
they are, and I've seen
they're
them. Right.
not they're not the whole story.
That's right. And I,
And
yeah,
that's a cliche that the public first thinks of when they think of homeless people. With the older people like myself, also what happens with a lot of older people is that they have things that they put in storage,
correct.
and they put things in storage thinking that they're going to get them out of storage as they correct their situation and get back into the world.
And they're paying all along the way.
But because they're older,
Yeah.
the world's not ready to have them come back. And so they're paying almost as much for their storage as what they used to pay for an apartment.
That's correct. That's correct.
And meanwhile, rent for the apartments like tripled.
Right. So really, it's an economic issue that people don't maybe want to. The people that could make changes aren't really addressing the issue behind it, right? That's causing it, which is an economic issue.
Well, one thing that's happened is the public authorities have like really made an effort. They have spent millions and millions and millions of dollars, especially since the COVID, to house the homeless people. But what happens with, again, the senior population, they have all these things in storage and they're given a room and they have to pay what they were paying for storage to have that room.
That's right. I have good friends that are living in their vehicles,
And so
and they
you
have
have
storage
these,
spaces, right?
so you have these people who are, a lot of seniors are housing their possessions instead of themselves.
That's correct.
Like they're storing, they have their lives in storage, and rather than throw everything away, they're homeless.
Right.
Like I have a friend who laughs at me. This is kind of a funny story. I have this friend. I used to be on a ski patrol,
Wow.
and I have this friend. He's kind of mega rich, and he enjoyed my friendship because he got a real kick out of my dedication to my music. He used to tell his friends. He would tell me, "Y'all wouldn't believe this. I have this friend who houses piano instead of himself. He's homeless, but his piano has a good home in storage."
Right.
And that's how a lot of seniors are. They're like, they don't want to give up what they own for a room, and they want to be able to have a cup of coffee in the morning. So
And
they,
you know what I saw in my own experience is that when you have kids that grow up and you're still holding on to all those old things, they don't care. They seem, at least
yeah,
in my experience, they had forgotten all about that stuff. But it's us that are the parents or the older people that you're talking about that are holding on to some of those memories because maybe you thought that there'd be some time where
And the kids don't
it would
care.
all come together again, and
I've
they
seen cartoons like that.
and you know, when I asked them, "What did you care about that, this or that," and they moved on, and they've created their own memories, their own possessions, I guess. And most of the time, they move on, and it's the people that are still holding on to these things that are the ones that are still caring about that, but are being affected by that because they're not able to live a quality of life because they are. I know people living in their vehicles, like I said, that are spending. Maybe they have like 3 large units, and they're spending over $1,000 a month in storage, and they're living in their vehicles, and somehow they're waiting for that time, like you said, to bring all the stuff out, get that place. But in the meantime, their quality of life is not there, and it could be a lot better. So there's some maybe some emotional things that are going on as well. But anyway, you know, early on, Art, and I know you're being quiet. I just wanted to say that one of the reasons that I wanted to even give my perspective was because I wanted to shed light on the people in the unhoused community or homeless community that weren't the usual stereotypes, that were the people that were working, maybe the working poor that were living in their vehicles, or people that were on disability or had some other issues going on, and they were more maybe a victim of circumstances than they were somebody that got in there for those things that we see on TV about, you know, people drinking too much or taking drugs. That is a part of what happens in that community. I've seen it around the church where I volunteer in Chatsworth.
No, you can't deny
Yeah,
there's a lot
there
of
is a lot of
mentally ill
that.
people on the street.
Fentanyl, as we know, is an issue in I see it in this community of Chatsworth, and I know it's something that's going on in other places. But I've so it's been an eye opener for me. But,
I
but
bet.
yeah. But anyway, it's a challenging issue, and I think that we can't underestimate the value of bringing more awareness to the issue and Art's perspective, because I think that's the only way that any change ever occurs is we just keep presenting the information to people
Can I
and not
share?
give up. Sure, share away.
Um, I'm a long term thinker, and I've thought about this ever since I've been homeless. I don't have the answer for 90% of the population that is homeless today, but for America's future, I do have the answer.
It's good because that is a one of the questions I was going to ask you. It's not an easy question, but I appreciate you wanting to share that.
Well,
Go ahead,
to
man.
me to me the solution is so simple. It's so funny. One of the biggest disgraces I've seen in America, and I'm sure a lot of parents who have kids will agree with me about this, is the counseling that high school kids receive is ridiculous. Like when I was in high school, I think I saw my counselor one time, and what they need, these kids, what they need is they need a career path to where when they get out of school, they have a job that they can take care of themselves where they'll never have to be homeless.
Right. It's just
That is
planning.
a
Right.
simple
Right.
solution. People
It's
need to work. People need to have an income where they can have an apartment or and a future to buy their homes. And what happens in our country, unfortunately, is that the kids get out of high school, they haven't had any counseling, they don't know what they want to do.
I know.
They-
We wait until they finish high school, and we figure I guess that's the time when you start getting serious about having these discussions.
they don't even do it in
Yeah.
college. They major in liberal arts.
Right.
What I think the kids need to do is starting their like ninth grade or 10th grade, they need to meet a counselor. They need to have a class, like forget study hall.
Right.
Have a class, call it My Future.
I think that's awesome. Yeah. I
And
think.
these kids every week they have to seriously explore careers that they're interested in, and they write letters trying to find mentors
And it could
and
be really.
internships.
And I think it could be any. would it be safe to say, or are you in agreement that it could be anything that they're showing an interest or maybe a talent for? It can include the arts as well, right? I mean, whatever it might be.
Well, of course.
Yeah, because I know
The
tradition.
counselors,
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. The
yeah,
counselors would work with the kids and they would be tested like to see if they match these careers and they're shown the realities of these careers. They go out in the field and they visit these companies and it's amazing how little they do that. They don't do that.
we don't. I think we wait until people get older, and then but there's not that that early guidance that you're talking about, or stewardship maybe, and
And then the other half of that is they need really, really serious drug, alcohol education because even a job is not going to cure the people who are prone to abuse drugs and alcohol. I have a friend when I first became homeless. This was like the most amazing thing to me. This guy was an engineer for the city of Burbank and he got addicted to heroin, lost his wife, family, job. And I asked this guy, it's like, this was a really sharp, smart guy. And I said, how could you let yourself fall that way? Didn't you care? And he told me, he goes, when people are drug addicts like that, they don't care. That's what he said. He
right.
goes, like when you're addicted to that, you just don't care. You really don't care until the light bulb comes on.
yeah,
You know.
and then in some, or if not in at least a good amount of those cases, people start traditionally. Some will resort to whatever means they need to in order to get the money to get the drugs, right? So
Well, but think
in
of
some cases, yeah,
my earlier premise. Like you take today's population of the homeless. Consider your situation at the church with the
right,
population there,
right,
the people that you give food to.
right.
Tell me honestly, if those people that you've been talking to the past 2 years, if they had a job that they liked, that they wanted, that they planned for, would they be coming to get food from you?
Probably not. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. See, long term, you you work with these kids now, and you're going to decrease the
the
homeless
only reason the only
population in the
reason I
future
and the only
by
yeah
75%.
right.
And what you're going to have left is you're going to have the 25% mentally ill drug addicts.
Right. I say probably not because I know that that community of people that could follow through with the jobs. It's sort of, there are those that can and would do what you're saying, and there are those that are still having some other issues that are going to need attention, maybe some substance issues or
Yeah,
maybe some mental health issues.
yeah,
But
of course.
if it was a person like yourself or me or people that are able to be in that world, or are in that world, those are the people that you're talking about, and they definitely, everybody wants to be useful. I think in life, I think it's a cliche
Absolutely right.
that if you give people some of their basic needs, they're just going to lie there and just watch TV all day. I think that my perception is that at least people in the U.S. that I know, they want to feel like people want to feel like they're contributing to something, and everybody has some sort of an interest or passion. So I think if you can develop, if you can help to get them back on track, if they got derailed somehow, yeah,
I have a good story for you about what we're talking about here. This occurred just yesterday. I know this very nice lady, and she's an extremely competent person, and she's been homeless for about 10 years. And her problem is that even though they have a lot of programs, so called programs for people, the public doesn't embrace a lot of these programs. Like this lady is dyslexic. And what was fascinating to me, she was sharing with me her story yesterday. And she had a friend who was a supervisor at our local bus company. And he got her on and they let her go because she was dyslexic because they couldn't accommodate her training.
Right.
And meanwhile, she got a higher, better paying job with a truck company over the road.
That's great. Yeah.
I know, but like, why couldn't the local bus company who's getting money from federal funding and state funding
Right.
and
Right.
county
Right.
funding, why couldn't they accommodate this lady?
I don't know. It's just it's a lack of common sense, or there's just what they call just a big bureaucracy.
So that's another part of the
Yeah.
solution. We
Right.
need to have better outreach
Right.
with employers and give them tax breaks for working with challenged population.
I think that in my own experience, what I've come across is if an issue doesn't affect somebody personally, it's not something that they've gone through or can relate to. Sometimes they don't understand that problem is an actual thing that exists for people unless they've gone through it themselves.
Yeah, you have to see it.
And not everybody has. I believe you are, or myself.
You have to see it to
We
believe
have
it.
we have. I think there are those though that can use their imagination or attempt to put themselves in somebody else's shoes to understand maybe what they're going through. But I think a lot of people, if it isn't something that affects them personally, they don't know that they don't give it enough time to attempt to solve that issue. There was an episode I had when I was in Tarzana. I had lost my voice to laryngitis, and it was a winter time, and I had issues where the bank that I had was shutting down my transactions because they thought they were fraudulent because I was in an area that I wasn't normally in. So I had
Abnormal
yeah, so I
activity.
had to actually call the bank on the phone, but I couldn't even talk to them because of my laryngitis. So I got an idea of the way the system was working. When you've got an issue that people can't relate to, they don't always know of a way to accommodate you to help you, which is your story about the lady, right? They had the money, they had the resources, but they didn't want to put the attention into creating a solution for that person.
But they work with the bus company had a sign on the bus where they did work with handicapped people,
Okay,
but her handicap wasn't like one of the
the
ones that
traditional, yeah,
they
or
worked with.
right,
But like, I was greatly surprised because there are some really accomplished dyslexic people in our society
right.
who are very successful out there. And like this lady herself, she just went out and got a better job.
I know a couple of people that have
I mean,
dyslexia. Yeah,
it's like the bus company's lost that they didn't keep her.
yeah. Well, because they just needed to go maybe put a little bit of extra effort in there to figuring out a
Yeah.
solution for her. I know some dyslexic people, and it's hard when you see them and people think that they're functioning in so many ways, but they don't understand when they're not able to do certain things that we take for granted. I think we get impatient with them and we don't understand how that's affecting their ability to see things.
Do you wanna do you
Yeah,
wanna ratchet this up a
yeah,
level and make it
yeah.
a little more interesting to your
Sure, go
viewers?
ahead.
One thing that we haven't talked about yet, and this is part of not letting homeless people become a cliche in your listeners' minds.
Right,
This really goes on. There are a lot of homeless people who are homeless because other people who have a lot of power in our society want those people to be homeless.
right.
I mean,
What's
they're.
so what's behind that? Is there a system in place that they're actually,
I mean, even a person who's not
if you know,
mentally
yeah,
ill, if they're homeless and someone is pulling strings, where, like in my case, this is really true. What happened to me? The people who wanted me to be homeless paid people to follow me around wherever I went and told other people not to talk to me, tried to paint me out to be insane,
which are
lied about me, slandered me, really said terrible things about me. People thought I was an axe murderer, I was a drug addict, and you name it. They told all these lies about me. So wherever I went, the doors were already shut before
right,
I got there.
right,
And I'm not the only person that's happened to, but there are all sorts of reasons people become homeless obviously they are homeless because they don't have the money to rent an apartment
Right.
and get off the street. But what the public doesn't know is what I'm describing now. There's a lot of homeless people out there who have to be homeless because
Well, I
because
know I've known Art for a while, and I know he's not any of those things that he was talking about. In my situation, and I'm sorry that you folks can't see me, but what happened with me is I broke up in a relationship, and I left the, the belongings in the vehicle and the things with the person that I broke up with. I went to live with family. It didn't work out for a while, but it was a life, just my experience in life, just a situation that happened, and I didn't want to be a burden to my family. So eventually, I didn't want to buck the system and make them unhappy about me being there. So I left, and I sort of just I went on this journey, and it started about 2 years ago. And
that's another
yeah,
dimension that we
yeah,
need to discuss.
yeah. So life experience or just situations that people go through in life, losing a spouse, somebody that passes away, that changes the dynamics of your situation, your ability to, if you in LA and maybe other parts, but I know LA is the prices of housing are very expensive, and
What you're talking
right,
about
yeah,
is being disconnected,
right,
not
yeah,
disowned
yeah,
per se, but a great deal of the homeless people are disconnected from their friends and family for various reasons. Sometimes it's because they bring this on themselves because they're going through mental problems that their family can't deal with and their friends can't deal with, but not always. It's not always their fault.
what I hear about too, Art, is that from people that are from other parts of the world, they say that homelessness doesn't really exist in their countries because they have a different culture where they don't turn their backs on people.
I
And
don't
that,
believe that. There's
yeah,
homelessness everywhere.
well, I haven't looked into those statistics
American
myself though.
society
Yeah,
tries really hard to house the homeless people. There's other reasons that people become homeless than I think America probably ranks up there as probably one of the best countries that deals with the homeless. To be honest with you, um, we're talking to adults here. A lot of people go through the homeless system like any other system in America. They game it. There's a lot of homeless people out there who make money being homeless.
hmm,
They're professional homeless. But this thing that I want to focus on,
sure,
that I'm concerned about for all the homeless people, is the disconnection. Um, when you become homeless, you immediately become an other. You're the stranger, and this is another reason why homelessness is a serious thing that people need to be concerned about, because when you're the stranger, nobody really wants to get to know you.
right.
So it's like when you're a homeless person, it, you don't just you're just not automatically accepted everywhere you go to get a coffee.
Yeah,
Any Starbucks you walk into, like,
that's true. That's true. It's
people
been
don't want you there.
I
They
know
don't
that.
know
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
What are you doing in my place? Who are you? And
I,
that's another reason why people are homeless,
well,
because they
that
can't
yeah,
overcome that.
right. That stigma or that cliche or that image that they have of the homeless person and what they bring with them or what their behaviors are going to be or who they're
Their baggage.
already making a judgment against that person about as somebody that you don't want to talk to.
Robert mentioned my signature backpack. Talk about a cliche for the homeless people. I mean, it's like right away, it's like, people dating are always talking about excess baggage. Here comes that guy with that backpack.
You know what?
Terrorist, he's
And
got a bomb.
and when I first met Art, he had a lot of bags around him, and I was making that judgment. But I got to experience that myself, and it growing up though, when I would see what we call a homeless person, you're making that judgment, and well, and many people just pass those people by, but now that having been in the community, I've gotten to know a lot of the people in our immediate area around in Chatsworth here. Now it's harder for me to, and I think this is a lesson, is to not be more accepting of them. I do pause and listen to what they, meet these people, because they are really the vulnerable ones being outside, and we people are afraid of that population. But what I realize is that their lives are really at stake, because they're in a vulnerable position, being in the elements, right? Being outside.
Oh God, that's a whole
And
whole nother
and with people
chapter.
bullying them, and the people that were going around and just
Worse than bullying.
yeah,
Bullying's
hurting people. Yeah.
no, it's so much more serious. If you've ever read any of those books that the um, animal societies put out about the pet mills where the animals are experimented on, they do worse with the homeless population because the homeless population has very little money, and
So some of
there's
this,
so much illegal research
so the
with
medical studies,
unethical
or with like pharmaceuticals or drug experiments or things like that, when they did, like when they were testing for syphilis people back in the,
and worse.
yeah.
They follow. There's people who are spotters, and they get paid for pointing out where there are homeless people, encampments and stuff like that. And then these scientists and these researchers, they go to these 7-Elevens and AMPMs and they pay off the managers, and they follow these people in there to where they know what they're going to eat and stuff like that. They get hit hard. The homeless people, the social security people on fixed incomes that are out there, they get abused pretty badly.
Are they using these people for these to test out? Like, is that what you're talking about? Test out certain drugs or things like that, or
Yeah,
they are? Yeah,
yeah.
I heard about, yeah, some places that are actually where they're conducting unnecessary operations on people so they can put them out and they could sell their organs. I had a friend of mine that was telling me about being taken to a place in downtown LA, and she was almost a victim of that. But she had a friend that
I
kind of,
believe it. I
yeah,
haven't
that got her
seen
out of
that,
there.
but
Yeah,
I certainly believe that
yeah,
goes on. I believe they harvest organs.
yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of homeless people out there who disappear, and the the worst that I've experienced with that. This is a true story. I'm not making this up. I was staying at the shelter one winter, and we were staying at the Armory over there near Hanson Dam.
Right.
And I got off the. Is that your phone?
Yeah, it was. I'm sorry about that.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
I should have put my notifications
Well,
off.
anyway,
Yeah.
I'm at the bus stop at Glen Oaks and Osborne, and there's these four gangbangers behind me. And I don't know if they were jerking my chain, but this is what I heard. They were having a conversation about how they had just killed this old man underneath this underpass because they had never killed anybody before and wanted to see what it was like.
I can believe it. Yeah,
Yeah, so like,
yeah.
yeah, it can be dangerous out here for sure.
Well, that's, I think, what happens. What we're talking about, putting when you put a different face on who you think the homeless people are, and you get to know that community and the people, and hopefully that's what this video in part is going to do, that to humanize the people that you may be passing through there. And if you see them as the value, as the person of value that they are, hopefully some of those people that are committing these crimes, these horrible things here, it sheds it hopefully the awareness will make people realize that these are not people just that are expendable. These
Well, I
are,
think you've
yeah,
seen, like I've
yeah,
seen,
yeah.
you've seen some people. The saddest thing about this to me is like I see people who should be world beaters and they won't let society help them in the way that they need to be helped, and so they're like perpetual going to your pantry every week for
Right.
the next 10 years
Right.
getting food, nothing changes.
Right.
I have a person who comes around, kind of strange. I know this one fella. I'm not going to mention his name.
That's
You
okay.
know him. You'll know who I'm
I
talking
think I know
about.
who you're talking about already. Yeah.
For some reason, he adopted me. Thinks of me as his psychiatrist. Whenever he's like all freaked out, he'll roll over here to try to calm down. And oh my God, this guy is like a complete psychiatric classical.
Right.
I mean, like
Case. Yeah.
if you had this guy on film, this he would be the classic schizophrenic that you would want
Right.
your students to see. When you meet the guy,
I know who you're talking about, and I've had that experience with him.
yeah,
Yeah.
you think that this guy should be making $1 million selling yachts to the super rich or
Right.
something, and then all of a sudden he just goes insane,
Yeah.
and you see his mental illness blossom. It's unbelievable, and yet you know that if he got help, he could be that guy selling $1 million yachts and living really well,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. So
And
there's a
it
there's
hurts.
right.
You feel like a parent, you know, like you feel really bad when you see people like that and encounter 'em.
You really it really
It
has to
must be worse for
be
you
right.
at the
Yeah.
church,
It's
working
got.
at the
I mean,
church.
I think at the church, unfortunately, when we have people that come across us like that, we can only do so much for them. Most of the time, all we can really do is listen to them, give them a little bit of understanding. But as far as providing those resources at our church, we're not able to do that. So it really has to be. It's got to be a comprehensive approach where you're able to follow up with this with different services that they need. I know these are kind of like cliched answers, but that really
No,
is
we're getting away from
that
the cliche.
no, I know. I don't know why I say that, Art, but because we all say,
One more thing to get away from the
yeah,
cliche before it
yeah,
gets dark.
yeah.
Okay, we talked about a few things that are ugly and some things that are interesting. And I think we should get in one part that is like a very neat thing about the homeless
Well, that's
thing.
good because I want to end up with that. Yeah,
We happen to be sitting here at a very special homeless place called the Oasis.
well, that's awesome.
It's a very pretty place with very pretty plants.
The lighting's still good. You're still looking good here.
And what's really cool about this spot is a lot of homeless people are artists
I'll show you a little
and
bit.
musicians and writers, and they're homeless so they can work on their craft, whether it's drawing or making music or writing a book. A lot of artists sit at this table that we're doing this interview at and draw, and people come here and write, and people come here and play their guitars, and they're homeless
I'm glad you're telling me that. I didn't know that.
because they're spending their time um, not making money working on their craft. And so instead of spending $2,000 a
Right,
month,
right.
they
get
would have
that.
to they would have to be using a lot of time that they're working on their
Right.
craft trying to become
Right.
successful. So again, don't think of homelessness as a cliche.
No.
I mean, they're
No, for me, actually, that was a choice I made because my my daughters are grown now, and they don't rely on me for that, that type of support. So for me, I experimented. I kind of went with the flow in these last 2 years, and now I'm still a caretaker at a church in Chatsworth. And that's where I reside. Um, but I did that so I could because I consider myself a creative person. I'm making this
well, you
video.
are. You're a
I want to
writer,
I want to
and you're
become a
doing this
filmmaker,
documentary.
right? And I'm writing books, so Art's correct. Well, for some people, it's a choice to give them more time to explore, explore that because we have a lot of time in this world, but we don't have an infinite amount of time.
Another thing
So
that's
yeah,
interesting about this population group, not just writers and musicians and artists, but a lot of athletes. You have some people who train for the Olympics while they're homeless until they make the Olympic team and get that Olympic support money. You have people who, when I first became homeless, I was good friends with this guy who became homeless so he could train to run his first marathon. That's what he did every day. He got up and ran and worked out and came back and slept instead of having a job and paying for his apartment. So there's all sorts of homeless people out there, not just drug addicts and
and
mentally ill
I got
people.
to say we talk about economics, and I think that if corporate executives, if people would just be willing to take a little bit more, those that are at the top, that are heading these corporations or these companies, and pay their employees a little bit more, you wouldn't hear stories about people that are one paycheck away from homelessness, or you wouldn't see people. I Somebody just told me about an amusement park where a third of the employees are living in their vehicles so that they can get to work. So I mean that's an embarrassing thing. I would think that the people that are in charge of these companies would care about that. I
Are
guess they
you
don't
talking
care.
about the ski industry by chance?
No, I'm talking about a big amusement park that I've decided maybe not yet to reveal the name yet.
Oh,
Um, but I just heard this about the employees, that a third of the employees there actually live in their vehicles so they can get to work. So they're really,
well, that's kind of cool of that employer to let them
yeah.
use their parking lot.
I don't know if they're using the parking lot. Maybe they are, but my first guess was that they weren't. But I don't know enough about that. Yeah. But anyway, I think if people sacrifice a little bit more, people wouldn't be having to worry about living paycheck to paycheck. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I run across people that work for a company. It looks like the people that are owning the place are doing okay, but maybe they're not. Maybe I just don't know enough about that situation. I don't know.
Well, you're bringing something up
Yeah,
that I haven't really thought a whole lot about, but I think while we're sitting here brainstorming,
yeah,
there is a whole lot that the established companies could do to um, take better care of their employees'
right,
futures
right,
to where they would not become homeless if they
right.
lost a job because of downsizing and stuff like that. Uh, I've been um, my initial homelessness wasn't caused due to economics of me losing my apartment. My initial homelessness occurred when I was 24 and I was disabled, and because I was disabled, I wasn't able to work. So,
Is that disability, if I could say, is it still is it still with you today? Is it?
yeah,
I'm not trying to like diminish
no, it
you
is.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it
that's another
is.
thing that I learned too is that people that I met through the church, several of them have disabilities, and that's another reason why they're in that situation. So, really, a lot of the purpose initially behind me wanting to do this was to dismiss some of those popular perceptions about why people are homeless, because there's a lot of, like you said, I think you mentioned that there was like a hundred, or there's different ways or something that people are, stories behind why people, and perhaps, and maybe even more than that. But I
Well,
wanted to,
I
yeah,
think if the what I wanted to say about this disability thing was that if corporate America was more concerned about having excellent employees that they cared about rather than caring about how they controlled their employees, the companies would be better. The companies would make more money. Their employers would work harder. And America would be 100 times better off. and the homeless population would decrease by at least 50%.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's just a lot about just wanting to
The reason I brought up
care
my
about people. Yeah.
disability, um, they did a lot of strange things with me the last 50 years. I was dragged through every program America had and not allowed to do any of them. I was like sort of in a school to see what government could and couldn't do. And one thing that I've always had my mind blown is when I read about how callous these companies are when they downsize. Just all of a sudden, 2,000 people are let go. You
What's
know,
happening now too, because some of these industries, like my sister was telling me about
unbelievable.
Walgreens,
You know,
all these, it's affecting retail a lot, um, and it's because many people have shifted how they order things instead of going into stores. The online business has exploded since really it started exploding during, I would say during COVID, maybe, where people getting more
yeah,
accustomed to
it
ordering
was really
things,
bad.
and
Well, it
that's
started
when,
with the explosion of the internet,
right,
the bricks and mortar stores. Can I touch on something about this?
sure,
Um, this is not about the homeless people who are homeless, but this is something that America really needs to do that they don't do. The people who are employed, they have absolutely no training. They don't learn what to do if they become homeless until they're homeless. It's
well,
like
yeah.
every homeless person after about 2 years is like somebody who's got their master's degree in social work.
Well, that's one of the things. I'm going to stop you for a minute in a good way, because we have a mutual friend named Mark. And one of the things that Mark said about art was that art helped him to find resources in the area here, and that you didn't necessarily keep going to those places yourself, but he appreciated that you introduced him to where those resources
Yeah,
were.
you learn about
When
all
I
this
was,
stuff,
when I,
but you learn about it
yeah,
too late.
yeah, when
You
I
you
was,
should know this when you become homeless. Like it's like the first night you're homeless, like
no, I
you're
spent,
sleeping in the bushes instead of going somewhere where you can be safe.
that's
You know,
exactly what happened. When I first experienced this almost 2 years ago in the spring, I was in the Long Beach. I'm naming Southern California areas, but I was in the Long Beach, San Pedro area. I was helping a couple out, and then when they were gone, I ended up being out there with my dog, Feisty.
in San Pedro,
San Pedro, Long Beach, Wilmington area,
boy, that could be that
and
could be
and,
kind
and
of
and
rough.
I was not in what you would consider great neighborhoods, right? But I always felt I was safe, because that's for a different video. But anyway,
You're confident.
I was, and I felt protected spiritually. I mean, I'm going to say that,
No,
right?
I
So,
understand
yeah,
that.
and
You
my,
felt
my
like
and
your
my faith,
karma.
right? Yeah. So,
I understand
but
that.
by the time, and Art's right, by the time I figured out where the resources were to get, food pantries and things like that, it was already time for, I was already moving on back to the valley. So I didn't know initially. So I went through really difficult days where we were on the street, just trying to figure out how to survive from one day to the next. Taking whatever, and I was reluctant to
Companies
ask.
should be responsible for
Yeah.
training people what to do when they're out of work and
So those
face those
resources,
situations.
it was for me. It was live and learn. That's how I found out about them. I didn't have someone. If I'd had someone like Art that was there, he would have shown me where these places were. But I had
I was shown.
to.
We're all
Yeah,
shown.
yeah.
That's my point.
But there
We should
are.
all be shown. It's again my same premise. Get these kids in high school, get them trained, get them on a career path that's real, and you will solve 90% of what the American government wastes money on.
Sort of like, I mean, I might call that maybe like, not that they're going down the wrong path to begin with, but just some maybe intervention is not the right word, early intervention, but usually,
Well,
but
if it's that early, it's not an intervention,
yeah,
it's preparation.
right,
So you
preparation.
don't need an intervention.
Yeah,
That's the whole
it's just a
thing.
it's a revamping of the educational system. I think that's why,
No, it's
not
just
not entirely,
no. They have counseling, but it's non-existent.
right,
Every high school has like a counselor.
but they're not really addressing, or they don't know how to address these type of
I don't know
Need
what
to
they
say.
do. When I was in high school, I saw mine once in 3 years. I honestly don't know what the high school counselor did.
But there was a class you talked about, maybe like creating a certain class for it,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
they need to do that, and they need to have a career class, and they also need to have a class where they're trained in these kind of things. Like,
Right.
what would you do? What would you do if you came home and your parents were dead and you couldn't pay for your house anymore?
Right.
And they learn about all these public resources that are out there.
Right. I think that maybe the library systems. I'm just thinking back about where they post some of this information.
Well,
But
the library,
yeah,
excellent point. I'm glad you
yeah,
brought that up.
yeah,
The library is trying to do this.
yeah.
But you know what? Again, 90% of the kids don't know how to use the library.
Yeah.
They don't know how to use the Los Angeles Public Library has the most amazing website. What they have for the high school kids is unbelievable. But I I used to be good friends with this lady who was the head librarian at the Chatsworth Library, and she died. And I used to kid with her because I used to like office. I go up there every day, and I would tell her, y'all should hire me to be your ambassador. I would love to go to all the high schools and talk y'all up and explain to these kids how to use. They have everything there. Training online, like from high school to college to out of school for job training. They have everything, like even if you wanted to take tests to be in the Secret Service, all online. I mean, that's how deep their portal is.
Right.
But like I talk to these kids on the bus. I go, "Do you have a library card?" No. And see, that's what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. Like if they did worked with what they had, America has everything,
Yeah.
and it's wasted. They don't put it in the hands of the people. The people don't know how to use
Right.
what's there. They don't let they one. I have nephews and nieces, and something that I've been really scared about is they talk about this divide between the haves and the have-nots getting bigger every day.
Right.
What I find out and what I see from my own personal experience is that the elites, this affects the homeless population greatly. They don't let everybody use the resources that are there.
Yeah. Right.
They interfere. Like there's a lot of homeless people who are homeless because they're not allowed to use the same resources that other people are using. When they try to use them, like a homeless person could go, well, I'm going to try to learn how to do this at the library. I'm going to go up to the library and start taking language lessons
Right.
so I can get a job with a Spanish company. And they go up the library and they try to use the resources that are there, and then they start turning it into a lab where they interfere online with the person's work to keep them from getting something done to see how they'll react.
I don't know anything about that, but I believe it. Yeah.
No, I hear this
Yeah.
from a lot
Yeah.
of people. They're not allowed. Basically, they're not allowed to use the internet without being interfered with. You've heard the term hackers.
Right. I know that the library system. One of the problems I had too is I wasn't able to save a document that I created. So that was another issue that I had with the library system. It was for security purposes. I couldn't save a Word document. So if
Oh,
I
that's
had,
kind of
yeah,
strange.
so that was different. Um, and one of the things that I experienced and some frustration with is
They
that
wouldn't let you save a document even if you had your own thumb drive.
that you could, I guess you could, yeah, but you just couldn't do it on their. You couldn't do it on their. I don't know if you, I guess you could. I mean, are you talking about like a
Yeah,
this? Yeah.
yeah, they wouldn't let you
Um,
attach one to the.
That I'm not sure about. I think was trying to do it without it. I should have thought about using the what are these called again? I'm using
Flash drive.
Yeah, flash drive. One of the things that I see that happens in the homeless community, maybe other people too, is that people lose a lot of things when they're unhoused. People run through phones, they lose phones, or things are taken from them. If you lose a password, and or if you had a certain phone that was linked to a certain account and you don't have that phone anymore, it's hard to get back into some of your email accounts. That's a problem I'm having right now with Google, is that I'm not able to get into an old email account that I had, because when they send you a link to update your password when you've forgotten it, they send it to the phone number that was associated with the account when you opened it.
That's why you should have another email account.
Yeah, and I didn't though, but
So get a friend to get your password for you. I can help you with
we'll talk
that.
about that. All right. Yeah.
But I want to address this thing that we're talking about everybody being able to use the same resources that are public
Right.
equally.
And not
I
being.
am really, really. This is one of my soapbox
That's okay.
things because of my nephews and nieces,
Right.
and I am not kidding. America is at war with its own people. It's gotten so obnoxious. I'm not making this up. I turned on a radio. They interfere with my radio all day long. I don't know how they do it, but the radio people are nuts. I have to have two radios and turn one off, and then they find out what channel I'm on and they shut it off while it's on, and stuff like that. I have these kind of problems going on all the time, and what I'm concerned about this war with the haves and the have-nots. So anyway, I'm listening to my radio. I'm not making this up. I hear this guy broadcasting on the air, one of the DJs. He said this point blank on the air. He said, this is exactly what he said. He said, yeah, you got to keep those minorities down. Kick them down. Keep kicking them down. Don't show mercy when they get up. Kick them back down. I'm like, I'm doing my gardening and I'm listening to some country music, to feel good while I'm working. And I flip the station, and that's what my ears heard. I'm not making this up.
I can believe it.
I'm not
Yeah.
a paranoid schizophrenic trying to get attention.
Right.
I'm telling your listeners, if they don't believe that this thing the media talks about this war within, with the different sides and stuff like that, I heard this just yesterday on the air. I see these things and hear these things, and I get scared for my nephews and nieces. I don't want them. I'm a little simplistic in my thinking. I'm a little naive. I forget, like, when things are done to me bad.
Oh, well, that's.
I'm ready to smile at the next person I talk to. I forget
Well,
that. But then
that's.
when I hear stuff like that,
Yeah.
I'm like, what is wrong with America today? So anyway, back to this homeless thing. As long as you have thinking like that, you're going to have homeless people.
Right.
Because see, the guy who said that, he wants you homeless because you're not his immediate circle, and all he cares about is he and his immediate family and the 3 or 4 friends that he has.
Right.
And the rest of the people, he wants to grind you under your bootstrap. He's going, yeah, get those homeless people, put them in a shelter 25 miles from me, and forget about them. So as long as you have attitudes like that, you're going to have homeless people no matter what the government does or what goes on. So a lot of it has to do with, we got to get the public to get off the thinking of these cliches,
Right.
which is what our talk's all been
Well,
about.
yeah, and one of the things I wanted to do is just I wanted to educate people on opening their minds up to who is in this situation of homelessness, so that they can be more sympathetic. I don't want to make it too complicated, but that's really what it is. Get to know those people. Don't be afraid to approach them. You know, it, you will. I think a lot of the time you're going to gain something of value if you get over your fears and talk to these folks out there. Because, like I said, I think in many ways they're more vulnerable. They're the vulnerable ones. They're the ones that are outside.
Oh God,
Yeah.
I have one friend. I used to go to the library every. This is interest your viewers a lot. I'm a IRS approved tax preparer for the last 18 years, and I'm also
I'm glad
a
you're sharing that, Art.
certified. I'm also a certified trainer, exercise trainer. So I spend a great deal of my time in the libraries. And I had this one homeless friend who was living in his car, and we were talking about the stranger. You know what this neighborhood did to him? They poured gasoline on his car and lit it on fire while he was asleep in the car. He woke up, his car was burning.
Did he survive that?
Yeah,
He did. Okay, good.
yeah.
Yeah, there's some horrendous things that go on out there, but I think just bringing, I think
And you know what? This guy was like a
bringing more
genius.
awareness. Yeah.
This guy could have been so productive for some computer company. He could code like just about anything, and he lost a job due to his age. They went with some youth, and he got a little bit behind in the languages when he became homeless. But he was like, he could have been he could have been
Right.
shown how to do anything where he would have been a valuable employee for
I've seen
some
a lot.
company.
I've met a lot of really interesting, very bright people uh, along the way in the last couple of years in this journey that I've been on, and still continue. If you had a choice, Art, if you were gonna get an ideal career situation or something you could be compensated for, would it be some of those things you talked about, the working with the IRS or the sports? You were a trainer. I said
I am a
you are
trainer.
a trainer. So
No,
is it
I keep my things current. I'm
good?
certified.
A physical trainer? Is that what kind of
Yeah.
training you're talking about? But the IRS also as a tax preparer. That's
Um,
a well. You're talking about two different things, right? That was tax preparation with the IRS that you had done. I think you said 18 years.
um, Careers and professions have interesting designations.
Well, let's say
With the IRS, I can't say certified. What I am is I'm a CTEC registered, IRS approved tax preparer. Where if you went to look me up on the IRS website, I would be in a book listed to do tax work that they approve of as being current with all my training and stuff like that to be legal. And with the um, exercise trainer, you could say I'm certified.
so
That is a certification.
those are things that you still would be interested in pursuing if they were able to. Is it are there any particular issues to accommodate you with those issues or with those types of
Yeah, we haven't
activities?
talked
Or
about.
we'll go into that at a different time. I think. Yeah.
Well, I didn't think it
No.
would be.
What
I didn't think it'd be appropriate
no, that's
for
fine. Yeah.
the recording, but they're.
What I was going to end with, I guess, was something more like on a positive. Well, this is positive because it's educational and it's informative. It is positive. I take that back. I guess what I was going to say was I was going to ask Art something like,
I can't get into
in,
that with
a,
your
in,
viewers. I wanted to speak on behalf of the homeless population.
let's
I,
leave it at
I
that then.
touched well,
Yeah,
I touched on it a little bit when I told your
because we're
listeners that I was like in a program to be shown what government can and can't do.
right.
I have a very unique
We can
situation.
we can talk about that. I think and maybe in a follow up segment because actually initially we were gonna this
I don't think I can talk about it with your viewers.
that's okay. We
I
don't
can
have to
talk
do
about it
that.
to you privately.
We don't need to talk about that. I was gonna just say like in a perfect world, Art, we all have passions, and if there was something, is there a hobby or a passion that we don't know about you? Anything that I don't know why. Maybe it's a signature question I'm creating or something, but
I think I
or
appreciate what you're
or is
doing.
that
You want to find out like what it is that I would like to do.
yeah? I mean, in a
Well,
perfect
see,
world, yeah.
I'm really weird. I like everything,
Well, that's good then. Yeah,
and You
Yeah,
know,
I
one of the
think
biggest ironies of my life, I started out as a musician, and I've worked like a writer or an actor. I've had like before I was disabled, I had like about 100 jobs, and the Social Security Administration said, "Enough, enough. We see what you're trying to do to this person." They gave me a disability pension. I've been on that for the last 50 years. But before I did that, when I was doing all those jobs, it didn't matter what I did. I had a career path that I loved.
yeah.
And the people said this was the most ironic thing. The people said, "No, you can't do that. We see you like it. We're not going to let you do that." It didn't matter whether I was playing a guitar or if I was digging a ditch. I would have a career path and go, "Oh, this is cool, man. I'm going to do this." And the people would go, "No, we're not going to let you do that. We see you like it." And that happened in about like 50 different career paths, man, before
Was
I
it
got on my
was it
pension. So people are
because
not always in control of their lives in spite of what people say. It's not always.
was it the employer in that of that particular job? They were the ones that were preventing you from going forward or maintain or keeping that job, or
Well, this is another thing that was such a
because we're
conundrum about my life.
we can talk about that. I think because
No,
we
no, 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 no.
no, yeah.
Since you got me on, I have to get my case in here.
Go ahead and do that. Yeah, that's fine. I'm not worried
People
about the time.
loved having me work for them.
And why wouldn't they? Or yeah,
No, people liked me.
yeah,
But some other people, I don't want to talk about this, but some other people did not want me to work.
I get it.
But I was I was a really good employee when I worked. I worked really hard. It was like football practice to me. And so a lot of the employees hated me because I didn't understand the world of work. I was too innocent and naive. You know, I didn't know how work could kill you at the time. I thought, you know, you work and you get out there and you work, you know, because that's how I was brought up. But like when I was working in Dallas, I could just stick my thumb out, and by the end of the day, I'd have a job. I mean, I was in demand. But some other people did not want me to work. They didn't want me to have any money, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I don't want to get into. And then the government stepped in and gave me a pension, and I've been on this pension for 50 years, and it's not very much money.
Yeah,
And I'm
obviously, yeah, I can see.
I'm
Yeah,
unhoused as a result of it,
yeah.
even though my piano and other possessions are housed in a storage facility.
Did we talk about that earlier? The storage? I think we did, right? I don't remember.
Only in mentioning about my piano.
I'm not sure if that was a conversation we had before we started filming or not, or
Well,
shooting the video.
I
Yeah,
tried to make it general for older people.
right.
There's a lot of people who have their
Well,
you know, they're in a home, and like you're talking about, they go in a divorce and they end up moving all their tools and this not in storage and
well,
living in their
people,
car.
that I think people just like they like stuff, and we are outside here. You can see that, but it's been a good interview, Art.
Well, you asked me
Yeah,
about my ideal situation.
yeah. Is that well, that's a I don't know how much.
There's no ideal situation. You're in a situation, and situations present themselves to you,
Right.
and you make the best of it.
That's right.
So, like, I'm not going to sit here and tell your viewers, "Hey, this is what I want to do." You know, because I know better.
Right.
I know the world doesn't really spin that way. That's why I sort of got off track and told you about
That's
my
okay.
20s.
Right.
And I'm not making that up. I would hear them when I'd get on the bus and I'd hear them outside my room. I'd hear these ladies walk by my room late at night, and I'd go, "No, Art, you can't do that. You like that too much." They would say that to me. I would hear them, saying, I'd go, I can't tell you how many times I've laughed so hard the rest of my life where I'd hear these people lie and go, "Oh, I love this so much." They don't let you do what you love unless you're truly blessed. Now, there are some people who are truly blessed who really do get to do that, but 90% of the population does not get to do.
I want to talk more about that, but I think we've been at this. Well, initially this is going to be a half, but a half hour. It's grown to an hour, but it's fine. Because I wanted you to be comfortable, and I wanted you to speak freely.
Well,
So
I spoke pretty freely,
yeah.
but there's some parts that, like, to be honest with you, there's some parts that if I said everything,
Well,
I could be maybe killed.
let's say relatively freely.
I'm comfortable
Yeah.
talking with y'all
Yeah.
about
So
this.
yeah, we'll talk about it because I think it's getting a little bit dark, but I think the lighting has been good.
This was kind of fun.
You're still looking good here. Um, this was our
Oh, forget what you said. As long as you look good.
this
How
was
LA
this
is
was
that?
this was the first the first taping of what I'm calling a series called Unhoused that I'm posting on YouTube, and it's the goal is to introduce a new person in the community weekly. So hopefully I'll be able to do that. Not sure if I'm going to be able to do that or not, but I want to thank Art for. Not everyone is comfortable sharing their life story for others to see it, and I really
Well, people don't
appreciate.
want to be pegged as homeless. It gets in the way.
And
Can I
think
say one thing in
sure,
closing?
sure.
On my closing, and um, if anything I said helps the public to not have a cliche pop in their head
Thank you.
when they hear the word homeless people, I will feel like I accomplished something tonight.
Well, I think you have because you're an articulate person, you're an intelligent person, a sincere person, and you've shed I think truth on opening people's minds that are going to be watching this to who the homeless are, because there are those 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 perceptions that people may have going into a situation, and uh, I wanted to also show the other side of why people end up in this situation, to shed light on that. And I may talk about more about people that are having some other maybe having some substance issues. I may have some of those people on here at some point because that's also an issue that needs to be addressed. And these people they're not getting the help that they need either. But I wanted to
I'm
present
not
Art.
in that category
No,
at all.
art is not in that category. That's why I said that would be for a different time. Art that is not Art's situation. And and I said that because I wanted to bring light on on people like Art who are in this
Thank you.
condition for those non-cliched perceptions that people have about drugs or alcohol, right, or other things. Anyway, Art, we may continue this to a different segment, but I do want to thank you for spending all this
It was
time
my
with me, man.
pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
I hope
And
I hope I did. I hope my comments were of substance of what you're looking for.
they were, and again, the idea was just to make people aware of who the people are that are being affected by this so they can learn from it and be more tolerant and understanding of that situation out there. So, Art, God bless you for sharing your time with me. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
So we will continue and keep going forward. Thank you everybody for watching this video. We really appreciate it. Be kind to people out there, especially the ones that
Well said.
yeah. Thank you so much.